up. Hey, look at that. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Let me. Okay, sweet. All right, awesome. Hey everyone, and welcome to season 2, episode 3 of Shop Talk. My name is Mario. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have to. There we go. I'm gonna try this again. Otherwise, I'm gonna get too much feedback from YouTube because I've got that going as well. I just turned the sound off. Can you still hear me, Will? Will, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Wait. Sometimes Discord just drops calls. Make sure we're okay.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome to season 2, episode 3 of Shop Talk. My name is Mario. Today I'm talking with Will. Say hi, Will.
Hi.
So we're doing something a little bit different today. Normally Shop Talk is an audio only cast, but I thought that since I was talking with Will and he's a big hobby guy, and I've been working on getting my YouTube streaming up and running. I've been playing around with that for the last couple of weeks. I thought we would just try and do a main chat today. We're live on YouTube, and if the video will go up later as well. So if you're interested in watching the video, by all means, please go ahead and do that. Will is a War Machine player from a few hours north of Vancouver. Will, where do you call home?
Kelowna, BC.
So that is approximately 3-ish hours to drive north from Vancouver.
Yeah, 3 to, depending on traffic and how everything goes in the Coquihalla, we're 3 to 5 hours away from you guys down at the coast.
Will, why should the internet give a shit about who you are?
You shouldn't, but I like to make models look pretty, and I like to hack them up and make them look different. And I like to come at War Machine with like 100% enthusiasm and 25% player skill. And I just want to go out, have fun, see the community grow, laugh, have a good time with everyone that's showing up, and just be hyped about a really fun game and see friendly faces and slap some butts and kick some ass and get my ass handed to me.
Let's go way back into ancient. When did you first discover that you were a nerd, and how did that story develop for you?
Oh, yeah, I think the defining kind of nerdy start was I spent a summer at my aunt's, and she had this wall of VHS, and I was looking at them one night, and I saw Star Wars and Willow and Dune, like the cassette, like VHS cassettes, and so I was like looking at the art on them and everything like that, and I was like, hey, like, can we watch these movies? These look really cool. And then we proceeded to like watch through a different kind of sci-fi fantasy movie that my aunt had for that entire summer, and or like that visit, and it was a really like cool, like eye-opening world to like nerd culture there.
How old were you at that point?
Ooh, I think like 7, 8 maybe.
Pretty impressionable.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So what was your first miniatures game then?
It was Warhammer. I my first introduction to Warhammer was on the bus with my friend after school, and he had an old school GW catalog back when they would put out like this tome of every model painted, and this is like back in the day when like land speeders were metal
Hmm.
and like stuff like that. And we would just like sit and sift through that book every day after school and just thought it was the coolest thing. And then I spent a summer working with my grandpa, and I put all the money I made into buying Warhammer Fantasy and whatever the edition was with like Lizardmen and Bretronians in like that one box set, and just went hard from that point on.
So when did you get into War Machine then?
That's kind of it's a little multifaceted. When I moved to Kelowna with a friend of mine, we were going to the hobby shop, and like we played Warhammer, so we're always going down to like our local hobby shop in Kelowna, Quantum Games, to get Warhammer models. And Mark One box sets were there, and we just thought they looked really cool, and we ended up picking up like a starter set each. And my friend picked up Crix, and I picked up Menoth, and we built and fumbled around with the rules a little bit, but since we didn't really know anyone or anything, they pretty much just turned into like a little ADD project that kind of sat on the side and then collected dust. Then years later, I can't remember off the top of my head of where it started, but I think it was when like Mark II came out and they started putting out plastic models. And my friend Ryan, he'll go by like Panzer online. Seen a lot of his like gorgeously painted stuff. Was just like, hey, this looks cool. We should give it a try. And so we all kind of picked up starters and kind of fumbled around that for a little while. And it slowly picked up steam, and we all kind of jumped around. And then like, there's a kind of a turning point. Our friend Marshall is a very committed player to any game he plays. And when we finally won him over to playing War Machine and he jumped in, it felt like we were really, like our core group of guys was playing War Machine, and then it just just started to grow from there, and kind of slowly exploded, really.
Not an uncommon story. You don't hear it all that often, but every once in a while somebody will say, "Hey, in Mark One, we stumbled upon this. We kind of bought some of the models, but then it just wasn't um, robust enough of a game at that point. It hadn't caught on quite like it did in Mark Two. So we kind of put it as a project to the side, and then came back to it later. So I find it fascinating when I hear similar stories that sort of permeate through the community like that. It's kind of cool.
Hmm.
And I think because Mark II was so explosive for so many communities, it's not an uncommon story. Um, it was similar for me. We got in right, I guess, when escalation, and like that was back in my day. We it wasn't really the internet wasn't really something that there were huge nerd communities on. So
Hmm.
we had the internet, but it wasn't really something that have a lot of forums or anything like that. So getting in contact with other people so we played basically in a bubble, like 4 players, and we played Mark One in a bubble. We didn't go to events. We didn't really know that there was a lot of other people playing, and I think that has evolved quite a bit for sure. So what
Yeah,
approximate?
that like.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no,
That like that awareness of others is a big thing now. Where like our ability to like pop online, see what communities are, find out that you can like, oh, I can go meet up with players, play stuff like that. It's a real big difference compared to the like, when you're just basement dwellers and you, you have no idea of the rest of the world out there.
I think it's really healthy to get out of the basement. We've talked about that before on the show, where um, people have found that their experience, and I think there's like two different kinds of people. Like I think there are people that prefer to play just with a small group of people, and it's more challenging for them to go and play in a larger community. But I think that there's a big group of people that find the game a lot more robust, a lot more when have access to different people play on a regular basis. And I think that it keeps the game fresh too. Because if you're playing against the same person all the time, you get into the same rut and just see the same matchup over and over again. I've really enjoyed branching out and meeting new people, meeting larger communities, going online and meeting new people. So it's kind of cool. Interesting too. I've really embraced Wartable as well as a source for that. I don't have a local shop right near me. We have a couple of local shops that are close in Vancouver, but the local shop that I have in not play War Machine. So I've had to branch out a little bit and to save on driving, especially with the little one at home, um, not always having a lot of flexibility to just go and drive. I've really embraced some of the online community, and then been able to get some games playing on Wartable. But yeah, that's cool. What year would you say that was then that you guys started playing more robustly then?
Um, I have a hard time putting a year on it, but I would say probably around like 14 or 15
Yeah.
years ago. No, not like maybe 13 to 14 years ago is where we like really started getting the like local group started to grow for War Machine.
Wait and look at the same time.
Nice.
Let's talk a little bit about your meta then. So, obviously, it looks a little bit different now than it did back then. At the at the height, would you say it was the height of War Machine for you?
I think it was probably around the time Colossals and Gargantuans dropped in Mark II. Uh, at that time we were doing regular events at our local, like at Quantum Games. A side note, like fantastic hobby store. We were lucky in the Okanagan. We got like two really friendly gaming stores. But at that time we were at Quantum all the time, and we were doing stuff like Food Machine and just like regular events. We regularly had like you know 10, 12 players coming out to the store every like Tuesday for our gaming night.
So what would you say it looks like now then?
Now so currently we're playing at a store called Obsidian Games in Vernon. And it's mainly that uh, I think Obsidian Games has done a fantastic job of making a beautiful store, but a store that really caters towards getting players in it. And uh, like a lot of brick and mortar have to deal with all the modern challenges of owning a gaming store and how profitable stuff like like Magic and other card games are, and how easy those games are to facilitate as well. But Obsidian still, I think the owners are both um, very big miniature gamers, and so that love shows through in the shop. So at that store right now, I think we get about, on a regular basis, we will have, um, 6 to 12 guys come out to play, which is really fun. So like every Friday we play at Obsidian, we'll have at this point we're having to kind of organize our games ahead of time just because we're starting to get that growth.
Awesome. It's really good when you have a store that can support you like that.
Hmm.
So okay, so just because I haven't spent a lot of time in the interior, where is Vernon compared to where you?
Vernon is about 45 minutes away from Kelowna, and like the Okanagan is kind of on a similar path that Vancouver is in the Lower Mainland of a lot of towns and cities close by to each other. So uh, I also work in Vernon,
Right.
so I have a 45-minute commute, and so it's really nice to get off of work on Friday and just drive down to the local gaming store and get ready to jump in and play games with everyone Friday after work.
And then you also have there's also a group in Kelowna that plays as well.
Or yeah, so our gaming group is really spread across the whole kind of Okanagan right now. We have a lot of players in the Vernon, Lumbee area and Kelowna. And then we are about 2 hours away from
Right.
Kamloops.
That's what I
And there's the, oh, yeah. And then so there's the Kamloops guys that we get to see on a regular basis. Like Corey Doyle will pop on down and, uh, you know, come down and kick our butts and have a good time. And, like we've had as we grew with War Machine, we grew alongside the Kamloops meta, and we were very involved with each other, and we were able to, each gaming group host on a regular basis, bomb down to adjoining cities, and when we started getting into this, it was really fun to have like a fun like rivalry and um, community that like we got really comfortable with going on road trips and like bombing down to Vancouver to go play a game, go for an event, and like I think our gaming group really thrives on getting to go and be social and enjoying that aspect of the festivities.
It's kind of built into just the nature of the Okanagan too, because the population is so spread out. The further and further away you get from the cities down here in um, it's just the nature of the way everything's sort of set up. Everything's a bit further apart the further and further you go. So you kind of have to.
Hmm.
Like it's not like living in like the greater New York area or something like that where there's just huge populations all over the place and like you know towns that are hundreds of thousands of people large. This is um you kind of have to drive if you're going to go anywhere. And if you want to make it to some of the larger events that we host down here or in Victoria or in Seattle, you kind of have to make the drive. Something that Corey's spoken about quite a bit, right? Like if you want those competitive events and you want something over 8 players, then you got to jump in the road. You got to be on the road for 3 hours sometimes six, right? Ends. Cool.
Yeah,
It's really neat how you guys have sort of developed in tandem with towns in the area too.
it was a great way to you know um, have divergent metas that got to like challenge each other and also subsidize like player count where if we're in like a big city like you're saying like New York or even like the lower mainland and stuff like that, we would have a higher player count because the population's there. But since the population's so much smaller, we're having to do stuff like this to ensure that we can have diverse games, and it's not the same four guys playing each other all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys have started to run events again. Tell me how that started and what the motivation for that was.
Uh, with any game system, our kind of gaming club got into, we have always been kind of event orientated.
Yeah.
We, starting off with 40K, um, with the guys that I play with, like Marshall, Corey, Ryan, we would, uh, with 40K, would go down to like this event called Astronomicon. That was a really fun 40K event that was very narrative based and it was very hobby based. And that quickly like showed us how cool it was to like make cool armies, go out and kind of like play fun games. And it wasn't just about winning the tournament, but it was about, you know, can I get a painting award? Can I, you know, compete in that level? And so it opened our eyes to that. And then when we play any game system, we generally try to do those kind of things. With getting back into Mark IV, we were, when we all kind of made the jump back into it again, um, Marshall just flew at it. Like there was an opportunity with like one of the 40K events to take up some table space, and their Hammer Time is the 40K group here, and they have been doing a really good job running events. And we were able to piggyback on it, and Marshall just took it and ran with it, and it was awesome. It just, you know, having an event for us kind of gives us all the drive to like, let's get some models painted, let's get some hobby work done, let's make sure there's community. And that level of, by running events, you're pulling the community together. And I understand War Machine is a competitive game at heart, but competitive nature aside, the idea of just getting people together to play and have a reason to is just fantastic. Go to events. If you're, a new player and you're nervous, like don't be worried about doing poorly at an event. You're not there to win. You're there to meet people, have a good time, make friends. Like go for the experience first. And I know there's always that mindset of people being worried about going to events, and it's imposing to go to a tournament. But I have yet to go to a tournament, and I think the one in Kamloops recently that we went to, I think I came in 19th out of 19th, like dead last. Like I had a fantastic day. I don't care that I came in last. It's there to have fun.
You got to get lucky. At any event, you have to get lucky to do well. It's just, yeah, sometimes you just have, even the best players in the world have bad days like that too, right? Like even the best players lose games. So you have to remind yourself of that sometimes.
Oh,
It's easy to get stuck in your bubble and have your own experience, but not it's not always sunshine and roses for everybody all the time.
no, no. And like, I always think there's something about remembering why you're playing the game while you're at events and stuff. And like, playing to win isn't the best mindset. Like, it's a great thing to happen, a great thing to strive for, but you got to enjoy your losses too. You can't look at that like, 2 hours of playing a game and lose and then be like, oh, that was all worthless.
Mm.
Like, none of that was like, I've I've lost many games and usually had a blast doing it too. And I think if you can get that mindset of being comfortable with your wins and losses, it just lets you enjoy the game more. And that's what you should be focusing on first. Like the challenge of being competitive is great. And I'm not saying anything against that, but get in there and have fun and make sure you're having fun first.
You mentioned your hiatus a little bit. So one of the neat things about this year, um, we've we've been very fortunate here in British Columbia that we've had quite a few groups that sort of survived and kept playing all through the end of Mark III and then 4. And we limped along a little bit with the community um, over 2023 and 2024, and things have really, been only growth. It's been slow in British Columbia, um, but
Hmm.
this year, I think, like end of last year and beginning of this year, we saw two big metas come back, and it was you guys up in Superior, and then Tacoma down in over the border. Two big groups that had been playing quite a bit in Mark III, and sort of the end of Mark II, beginning of Mark III, and then had taken a bit of a hiatus, and now this year have started to come back. So that's really neat for us. It's kind of um, been almost like a 40% jump in attendance for some of the events in the area. Seattle obviously pulling from Tacoma and us here in Vancouver, and then into the pulling from you guys. So that's been really
Hmm.
refreshing for us. We've been kind of trying and putting in working hard to try and keep this flame alive, and it's kind of been a bit rewarding to see some of those groups come back. So what was it about Mark IV that drew you folks in your back to playing War?
Um, I I don't mean to speak ill in any way, but what we had originally was that got us into Mark II, and then followed into like Mark IV, was us all being like 40K players and kind of getting stagnant with 40K
Mhm.
and how fast its changes were and stuff like that. And like as our lives are progressing, like for myself, like fatherhood and work and everything like that, my ability to work on you know 80 to 100 models in an army just plummeted. And when we started seeing all the stuff coming out for Mark IV, like a we really enjoyed Mark II. We loved it. It was a great time. It was my favorite time of like gaming in general. And seeing it kind of come back and seeing them refresh things, and the 3D printing was interesting to see, and like, okay, this is you know the magnetized jacks, the app coming out, the seeing steamroller coming back again, seeing like all these little factors of, hey, if you choose a caster to Morkfar one, you get to have a spell rack and stuff like that. And
Yep.
it it got that flame alive pretty quickly. And then there's a deciding moment where like our core group, like Ryan, Corey, Marshall, and I were just like, all right, let's just give this a shot. And I think that was last spring.
Yeah.
And we just jumped in, and really once we started playing and like getting some reps in and checking out these new models and everything like that, like it just started clicking and felt great to play again. And like this game has a such a lovely depth and like so many challenges. It's fantastic to play.
Yeah, I think that's exactly when I saw you starting to comment a little bit on the Facebook, some of the Facebook posts and stuff like that. And I knew your name because Corey Doyle had mentioned you a couple of times. I guess you did a little bit of painting for him back in the day. And he said that you were a really good painter. Had missed playing War Machine with and your area at the end of Mark III in the beginning. So I had recognized your name from chatting with Corey a few times, and then when I saw that you were posting, um, the it was we knew some movement was happening, so that's good. We were happy about that.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, that's been like getting to have the history with these other local metas and like you're saying, you see all these people kind of coming out of like gaming retirement to start playing War Machine again, and it's like watching this like sleeping giant awaken again, and it has me really excited for what the next couple of years are going to be like, because I think there's how strong it was at when Mark II was kind of in its prime of like the BC meta was an awesome world to be in, and like you saw like gaming events where like War Machine had equal or more players than like 40K in those days. And I'll always use that as like a metric because GW's the giant that were all kind of involved with one way or another if you're into like mini hobbies, um, and getting to see that like its growth is really there. And I think the timing right now is actually pretty damn decent. That like there's lots of communities. It feels like a game that has it's not too overwhelming in size and model count and such. And as Steamforge like takes things forward and brings out these wonderful starter sets, and their plan for how to retail the armies, it feels like it's becoming a very accessible game as long as there's stock.
Yeah, so does your store, are you able to get stock into the thing it right now?
Yes and no. Um, Obsidian's had their hurdles dealing with, I think it's like Lion Rampart
Yeah.
is their distributor, and it has been challenging as all hell. They've been getting stock that's like we ordered it in August and then it just showed up a couple weeks ago. And it's I when Steamforge announced their new kind of retail setup over the last few weeks, um, it has me really hopeful for stores, because I think a biggest thing hindering our local play group right now is there isn't War Machine on the shelves. I can't run a demo and say, hey, go grab that awesome box set right there and you can start playing with your friends kind of deal, right?
Yeah, that's certainly been the challenge for us as well. So our shop down here that we have traditionally run our events at is in next Vancouver. And it's just, I mean, I interviewed the shop owner as well, and he explained it much better than I have. But basically, they do have to do everything in volume, and um, if they're ordering if they're ordering War Machine product, then they need to go through the distributor, because if they don't go through the distributor, then that's less product that they're ordering through. The more of their percentage of their volume that they distributor, the better the allocation they get when it comes time to order. And um, it's with Lion Rampant, amount of the catalog that they stock is something like 20% of the whole catalog that they'll actually pull into the store. So it's just not worth them adding some of those things into the ordering cart, because it hinders them from ordering other things. And then when they order direct from Teamforged, it's just not a very good. It's not as good as for the store as it is as ordering through the distributor. So if they do order anything, then they have to go through. So it's been a challenge getting stuff on the shelves, and it's just tough. Um, like shipping has not been super um lucrative for us. Like it's just not a great thing. We've been able to pull some stuff in through dates. So we have some folks down here that have PO boxes dates, and then we'll be able to go across the border and then bring
Well,
it
that's a
back.
nice way of kind of circumventing things a little bit.
Yeah, they'll bring it back. They have to pay duty on those items. moving forwards, it's going to be a little bit challenging, I think, next little while. But that has how we've been done it in the past. But it just like shipping times have just been challenging to direct from it. Really turned our locals off from doing that. So I'm hoping that it does get better. That's certainly been our biggest challenge. I know that we have a new store, not a new store, but they're starting to pull in more product in Richmond, British Columbia. It's called Richmond Reroll. We're actually going to be running a event May 31st. There, a War Machine event. Checking out that store, and we're hoping. One of the plans that we've had this run a journeyman, like not a journeyman league, but a brawl machine league. It's a 50-point format.
Hmm.
And so just have it a little more friendly for newer players. The scenarios are designed more for that point level. We wanted to give that a try.
Oh, fun.
And then it's a fan made format. It's done by curated by the Euro Machine folks, the scenarios for that. But we wanted to give that a try, and we wanted to do it in the shop. And just because some of the other shops haven't been able to get product in, and this store in Richmond is, we wanted to try and do that. But it's all of us are freaking adults and trying to manage our schedule, stuff like that. So I hope it does happen this year. That's the plan. I'm not sure if it's gonna.
We Ryan and I played a bit of Brawl Machine in Mark III. I remember like one day Ryan was just like, "Hey, there's this really cool format. You can't have any doubles. It's smaller. It's looks really enjoyable." And so like we both kind of like secretly like grabbed a Brawl Machine list because when the gaming group focus was like 40K, it we didn't want to derail a little bit, but it was a fun way to kind of like, and this is right before, I guess it was Mark III where it was happening.
Yeah.
But it was, I think, only like a couple months before like Mark IV dropped.
Yeah.
And so with having that little bit of Brawl Machine experience, it was still keeping War Machine in our minds a little bit and fresh and like made us remember the good old times kind of deal. Yeah, unfortunately, with the shipping and everything, like just obtaining product right now, how there's the challenges there, and like everything that Privateer Press and then Steamforged Games has gone through. I really look forward to a future where stuff can be on the shelves. I've just always, in this scenario, just relegating ourselves to have a little bit of patience and trying to like keep a positive swing on it. Like it's really easy to um, vilify like the game company or blame someone, but at the end of the day, if the game's selling well enough that it's hard to keep stock and get stock in because it's expanding fairly fast, it's the problem I'd rather have than the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's not like you can't get product either. Just more challenging than being able to walk into it.
Yeah, I would love to have some just impulse buys, and I'd have a Crick's army right now if I could.
Yeah, it's true. Cool. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your group because I think that it's fairly unique in some of the other groups that we have here in British Columbia, where you have a really high painting standard throughout the players that are playing. So, like, of the 4 players that you've mentioned before, they all are pretty much fully painted when they came down to Broken Coast Barrage. Is that something
Mhm.
that has been important to your group for a long time?
Very much so. Like I was talking about a old tournament system we used to go to circuit, the Astronomicon. Um, it instilled a very like hobby heavy focus with us, and honestly, I feel lucky as all hell that I've got to grow up gaming alongside like Marshall, Ryan, and Corey. Like those three guys are fantastic in so many different ways for their hobby content or like what they do. And by having like a really core group that focused on hobby and everyone was, you know, putting out a new model and pushing themselves a little further, and like we have a very friendly and positive, like, not competition, but there's that level of like, I see Marshall pump out something beautiful, and you're like, I gotta get off my ass and make sure I'm putting some good effort. And like, you know, every so often Ryan will go back into the dojo of like painting tech and come out with something that's just like, holy cow. Like he taught me about this over and under shading that I'm using on these death dealers. And really it's as simple as like I got to airbrush the bottom of this one color and then hit it from the top and then kind of blend the two together, and it was like creating a really fun popping style. And like by having peers to look up to and challenge yourself to, it's always kept ourselves in a very good um, hobby focused mindset. And like watch Corey just like constantly just steam forward on like just great looking models and like the consistency he's painting at and rate, and like his troll bloods were gorgeous, right? I think he won best painted at your event.
Yep, we had I had one of the Warcaster folks come and judge that, and ended up having winning that title. So yeah, no, it's gorgeous. Yellow trolls. Always love alternate skin colors for trolls. It's always super cool. But no, gorgeous models. Did a really good job. Yeah, no, that's
And so like, oh, go ahead.
no, it's all right. Keep going.
Um, so like getting to have uh, a very like positive hobby group has been very enjoyable. And like we, as we see our other locals play and paint and grow hobby wise too, and just like it's not about who's doing the best or anything like that. It's about just like making it accessible, and like anytime you put brush to a model, it's good. Like just get in there, have fun, and work at the pace that works for you. And I really like that. It feels like a good mentality and a nice thing to strive for. Like playing this game fully painted and having, tables with interesting terrain and like fully painted terrain. It's beautiful to see. That's what's going to catch people's eyes when they, walk by and see this.
Certainly been the motivation for some of the terrain projects that I've been doing over the last couple of years. Just having that eye-catching piece to it. Um,
Mhm.
we've struggled with that a little bit because of the, we cater to folks, and not that anybody's ever, said, "Hey, I hate this 3D terrain," or anything like that. But it's certainly a consideration. I've really embraced the 2.5D terrain. Um, I love the toppers. I love making them beautiful and then giving people the option about whether they want them on their table or not. Um, and that's sort of been a project for me to see if I can make my tables as modular as possible, but also having that art piece to it. Kind of scratches that that ADHD portion of my brain where it's like, okay, make this just right. So, it's been
Uh,
fun.
Building terrain that's playable and pretty is such a interesting and like fun challenge, and is quite the challenge. And like, back in the days of like just 2D terrain for War Machine, I'm glad it's grown away from that. And like I understand its accessibility when you're playing like a very um, like high end tournament game, but then at the same time, like just seeing the game look good, and I know like a lot of tournament players will enjoy playing on a good looking table for the vast majority of it, but getting that like what you're doing with like the toppers and then having like a template underneath and making that look good, but then also have the accessibility to play well is wicked.
I want to talk a little bit more about. I want to sort of keep going along this hobby. Uh, Sorry, my brain. I'm trying to do two things at once. I want to continue with the hobby talk a little bit. You have worked on a lot of different projects in the past. What other armies have you painted and played with in the past for War Machine?
Uh, I think I've almost touched every army in War Machine in one little ADHD burst or another, and I'm I like to play what army I have a cool little idea for the most. And right now, Chimera is really scratching that itch. And it also lets me play some jank on the table, which I really like too. So I'm really happy with that. But like, um, my biggest stretch in War Machine for a faction was Mark II Circle. And I got to sculpt and repose a lot of werewolves, and that was a blast. Um, I've got to back in the day, Jeff Everett. I got to like help convert up his kind of undead Signar he was rocking. I've played Scorn and Mercenaries. I think for like big conversion projects. Circle really took the cake there, and then I haven't had anything like fully completed or painted for a long time in like War Machine in general, and so it's been nice to jump back in with Mark IV and how pretty Chimera looks and get to take a fun spin on them.
So tell me about this Chimera project because a lot of these models are heavily converted. What was the motivation? Like, it's the fish Chimera. Um, you've got a lot of fins and stuff like that on the heads. So what was the motivation behind that, and what's sort of the reason behind what you've chosen to do?
Um, so this is a continuation of like a couple failed conversion projects. I tried to make an underwater Legion army kind of right at the end of Mark II, but uh, my son was just born, and like it, I just didn't have the time to facilitate working on all that at that time, and that's kind of as we fizzled out playing War Machine locally. So I had this like, uh, like the Naga from World of Warcraft, kind of inspired Legion that I was starting to work on, and then when I was playing 40k, I was trying to make like a underwater Dark Eldar army, and so I've taken all the tech that I've learned from those like kind of failed attempts, and then with coming back into this, the um, Chimera theme of being like this organic, synthetic, mechanical hybrid um, was really inspiring to work with that. And with one thing I found was trying to do conversions over a large army. It takes a lot of patience and drive. And I saw how like the model count in War Machine was much more manageable. And I saw it as an opportunity like, okay, I can finally get this idea out and get off my butt and get it get it finally built. So it's been fun to uh, start implementing that. And what I really wanted was a army that was packed full of color, had a you know a natural theme, and get to do a lot of converting on it and show off a lot of sculpting while not being overloaded with how much work I had to do.
Are all of the infantry models, do they all have converted heads?
Yeah. At this point, I don't think I have a model that doesn't have some type of sculpting on it yet. And there's a part of me that wants to ensure that everything has some type of sculpting on it or some type of conversion that, like, it's turning a little bit like OCD that I have to hack up a model or repose it. And sometimes I should just let a good model be a good model. Uh, like seeing the new Lilith, I want to cut her legs off and just give her a big serpentine body
Awesome.
and try to figure that out. I was really tempted to buy two just in case I like completely messed it up and be like, okay, I got a spare.
Awesome. Um, are you sculpting the heads, like, straight with green stuff? You've, posted a couple of videos of some of the sculpting work that you've done. Um, I'm not sure that I understood exactly what you had done, to repose the heads. I think that's the most striking part about it is the fins on the back of the head.
If you give me 1 sec, I'm
Yeah,
going to
sure.
grab my gaming case because I can put a couple things on camera. So the fins on the head have been it was something that I saw that, like, to kind of make like a merfolk themed army and implementing that. And I've uh, I've done it to all the infantry so far, and I'm working on like my heavies as well. So like right now I have Bella that I've been working on,
Oh, yeah.
and so what I do is I use plastic card to create the fin, and I'll use like my Dremel and sanding tools to get the shape that I want. And then after I get those all in place, sculpting the ridges to go along with it. And at the end of the day, it's not that complex to do. It's becoming like, of course, I'm getting a lot of practice on my models with it, but it's pretty rudimentary stuff. Just getting to exercise that and, you know, be daring enough to take a Dremel to your model and there's a point of no return.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Um, and so I'm trying to, I got a bunch of cool, like with the advent of 3D printing, like basing is turning into like the funnest thing ever
Yep.
when you can get 3D printed seaweed and coral and stuff like that. And like really it's the bases are cork with, like a shmoo of texture and then these items on there. And it, you know, adds a lot to a model idea and approaching converting an army in that sense where you want to have a very solid theme. You want to be able to sell it. You want people to be able to look at that and recognize what's going on there and make it easily identifiable. And then fun poppy colors that's going to get everyone's attention from across the hall is, I think, uh, our gaming club kind of learned that quite quickly. And so, like, when we would go to tournaments, we'd be rocking like our KGC t-shirts. Marshall would print off for us, and we'd have like hot pink or lime green and like fun poppy colors.
Yeah.
And a lot of us incorporate fun colors like that into our armies to, you know, catch people's eyes.
Are you doing the 3D printing, or do you have somebody that does that for you?
These guys, I the I can't remember it off the top of my head. Um, but I'm just purchasing like this stuff online right now,
Oh, okay.
and see if I can. Oh, I feel like Tool. I can't come up with what the name of the place is. It's he 3D prints like a bunch of different basing materials, and that's what like his website's focused on. Like
Okay.
he'll sculpt and do,
Right.
and it's really cool stuff.
Is it done in resin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love basing as well. I've done a few different things in the past. Normally it's just cork and like foam card that I'm making like tiles out of. I've done that quite a
Hmm.
bit, and then for my Gatorman that I did last year, I was using some water effect on, so that's the first time I've used that. I got a 3D printer this year, Christmas time. It's a FDM plastic
Ooh.
um, 3D printer, and it doesn't do resin. But what I have been doing is bases. I really wanted. So what I started with was a roller from Green Stuff World, using modeling clay, and I was
Hmm.
making bases that kind of look like with modeling clay. Uh, but they're super flimsy and they've started to break apart. And they don't really hold up to wear and tear on the table very well. I found an STL that was very similar, um, without all the detail, but it paints up really nicely. Um, you can tell that it's 3D printed because it has some of the layer lines, but since it's a base, um, it kind of gets covered up by quite a bit of the model. So like these things, they look pretty. Um, I've been enjoying those. Ended up printing them at 45 degrees so that the layer lines would be a little bit less visible.
Okay.
But
Uh,
it turns out that on the Void engine, it turned out really well as well. So I'm really happy with the.
with my experience with like filament printed stuff, I got a friend to print out a table's worth of Necron terrain that I like with a filament printer, and then I I work in collision repair, and so I've got a lot of experience of like painting and priming and filler materials. And with filament printed stuff, sanding goes a long way. Like grabbing like 220 and like giving those guys like a little bit of a scuff to like cut down the printing lines is really easy to do and like won't mess up detail all too much as long as you're being like tactful about it. But you can you can clean up that quite quickly with some extra like elbow grease, and we've had some pretty cool success with that kind of stuff. And it's amazing to see because it feels like it's just making things more accessible for everybody, right?
Mhm. That has definitely been the biggest change for the ability to have more 3D elements on the table with the terrain is the fact that we can get it 3D printed. It's way cheaper, and I can do it myself. Having the 3D printer here, like I don't have to find product uh, stores and stuff like that. I can have a lot of freedom with what kind of terrain I want to make and print and adjust. And there's a lot of customization that you can do as well. Just I've started using some um, like 3D, like I just use Tinkercad, which is an online web-based program, um, for adjusting scale files and like building 3D models. So like
Hmm.
that's what I did with this. These little rock formations. It was a terrain piece that I purchased the STL files for, and I cut it down into CAD and made these little. They're just parts of the terrain that I've kind of thought off basically, and then I printed them as their own independent scale file. So it's been fun kind of tinkering with that and just making my own terrain, making the terrain that I want to see on my tables, and not having to like go to Battlefield in a box and paying $60 for one piece. I can print this stuff for pennies on the dollar, and it's
Hmm.
super easy. And it's not made out of foam anymore, so I can use it more than 3 times on the table without it getting destroyed. And put some sealer on it, and it's changed my life so much. It's made it so much more accessible, so much easier to 3D toppers. It's awesome.
And seeing battlefields just looking cool is
Mhm.
just the best. Like there there's nothing cooler than getting to play on like a really cool board. Like it helps me imagine what's going on with my little toy soldiers in such a fun way, right? Like uh and with like the amount of people that are doing 3D sculpting out there these days, and like y- there's such a plethora of like STLs to get now, right? And like you're saying, the ability to like grab an STL, modify it to what you need, and use it. It's just like this endless vat now that we get to enjoy.
The last interview that I did February was with Tyson from he runs LVO, the War Machine portion at LVO, and
Oh, cool.
he has his own company for um, War Machine specific 3D printed models and STLs that he sells called Terraniacs. So chatting with him last time, it was kind of neat. Very cool set of STLs. I started looking at some of those files. Add that to the rotation. So
Oh, sweet. I've seen like some really cool like steampunk themed boards, and like I saw someone did like these like Iosian buildings and such,
mhm.
and like getting to see like War Machine themed specific terrain would be so fun to play on, to just like really force more, not force, but like enjoy more of that narrative.
So I actually have those files. So hopefully,
Oh, awesome.
Broken Coast Barrage next year. That's one of my goals is to have a IOSIN table. I started. I actually it's the gentleman that does that. His handle is Workbench Mechanic. And
Okay, yes, yeah, I remember.
like those IOSIN files are free actually online. Um, and uh, I printed some custom defenses for my Dusk army, and they're just the walls from that set, and I adjusted the size to print at exactly the defense size. So I've got those for my defenses for my army, and then the plan is to start printing some of those buildings, getting them painted for next year's have an IOS table. Um,
Oh, cool. That's really cool.
I know that for WTC last year because they had such a emphasis for 3D toppers. Um, they use some of those files as well. So I purchased some of the WTC specific screen terrain. And then the idea is
Oh,
just to match that neoprene terrain with some of the toppers as well, um, so that we can have like the exact IOSIN terrain that they. We'll see how far that gets, but that's the plan.
that's really cool. If you ever want like a table's worth of stuff like painted, ship that on down.
Okay,
We'd take a crack at that too to help contribute.
absolutely.
Painting terrain is, uh, I think, one of the most relaxing things I get to do as a hobbyist nowadays. Because like the level of detail you have to put into painting terrain versus like a miniature is so much more different, and there's so many fun tech with like airbrushing and dry brushing and stuff like that that like you can make terrain look good and not feel like you're busting your hump the whole time trying to like perfect it.
Yeah, so that's what I did this year. I knew that I wanted more clouds and more trees. Um, because I was trying to do 9 tables this year. So we did 6 last year. So that was like the basics was more trees, more clouds. So I found a couple STL files that I really liked, and because I was new to the 3D printer, they were simple enough that I could bang them out pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively. And then it was basically just 4 days, like 1 hour session for 4 days, and we got, I don't know, 25 trees, 7 cloud templates, a bunch of walls, and what else did I paint? A bunch of like rubble. Well, so it was pretty quick, much faster than I paint models. Um, it was a pretty neat little project, and hoping to do a little more of that this year. I purchased some 3D printed buildings last year, and they've been sitting here taunting me unpainted for the last little while. So that's part of the projects this year is to get those done, and then to do the IOSIN table as well. So that'll be every year for Broken Coast. I want to expand a little bit on our terrain. But if I can get some people to help me, that would go a lot faster, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That's um we've been with like expanding our terrain to house game night more, and like the last event that we did,
Hmm.
local guy here, Kyle, has been able to do like laser cut like MDF and like particle board. And so he pumped out just all the like tree templates, all the pond, all the hill templates and stuff like that. And we went on like a massive spree where like I have photos of like my dining room table covered in terrain as we're like getting to like just pound through all that. And it was such a blast, like to like hit that up and then see it the tables and be like, sweet, we've got like, you know, I know it's not ITC specific kind of stuff where we have some stuff that we got to still have some house rules on or have a discussion with your opponent on for terrain, but it still looks good and it's nice to play on something that's, you know, looks narratively appropriate and like it's full of color. And uh, honestly, like right now, I think we have like for our gaming group, we have the ability to do 9 tables now. And, you know, like as all our events start growing and stuff like that, the ability to like, hey, I got this big tote of terrain I can bring down to your event or vice versa. And, you know, fingers crossed for those days where it's like, oh, we have like a 30 plus player tournament now, 2-day weekend. We can, you know, pool together BC gaming groups worth of terrain and host something like that without any issues.
That's something that we've been talking a lot about. So Luke, one of our locals, plays for going to be captain of Team 2 for Canada this year at the WTC. He is a lawyer, and we've been just starting to having conversations about potentially incorporating, because apparently we need to run a con, because that's what I need in my life right now is more projects. Like started to have that
that's,
conversation. Maybe not this year, maybe next year.
that's awesome. Uh, it, it's funny how like I applaud all the people that rise up and, you know, getting to run events and build terrain for it and stuff like that. It's a big selfless task, and like all those guys that do that, like big shout out to them, clap on the back. Like it, these are the people we need to help these communities grow, and like if we don't have that facilitation, we don't get a community, we don't get to grow, we don't get to have fun. And it's, uh, you know, kudos to you guys and everyone that's doing that kind of thing. Like, it's a big necessity for us to enjoy this game.
Don't sell yourself short. You guys have been doing a great job up there as well.
But yeah, I'm very proud of our gaming group of like everyone contributes in so many different ways. We have very like just good, positive people that I think we've got a very friendly and fun group to play against, and something that we always want to kind of not that we want segregation, but you know when you have kind of a gaming group and it feels like we're kind of having like these gaming group teams play against each other, you want to rep your group with a sense of pride and like uh when we get to all meet up and play together, it feels good being able to like go into these games, see friendly faces, know that everyone's approaching things in a good sportsmanlike conduct and like is there to have fun, right?
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about what you have done with your kids with the hobby. So your son is painting a convergence army.
Yes.
And he's
um
9, you said?
yeah, he's 9 and uh going to bowl me over and kick this old man out of the way so he can take over the reins and go have fun doing hobby content.
Fair enough.
Uh, we we've been a very like uh, hands-on household of just showing our kids the things that we enjoy, and our kids are eclectic little nerds like me and my wife are, and yeah, it's been a really fun process. Like we started with D&D like models, like the you know
Reaper stuff.
dirt cheap ones you
Yep.
can get from the hobby
Yep.
store and stuff like that, and like dollar store acrylic paints. But then like as he progressed and he enjoyed and we just kept it fun and light, he's really latched on to like all the things that I'm really lucky that all the things that I do are hobby wise and nerd wise he thinks is really cool and just wants to jump in there with me. And so um, we've just been kind of going slowly. And as we started getting back into War Machine, we were playing like 40K together, and it started to hurt my soul a little bit playing 40K still at home. And so I was like, well, if I want to play more War Machine, I've got to get him on board. And so we had like a little serious powwow being like, hey, you want to try this out? Let's find an army you think is cool and it'll be your army. You get a try. And honestly, like I just reached out to the community and said, hey, my son wants to get into it, and he decided on Convergence, and like some great individuals like passed on like really cool collection of stuff, and it made it really affordable, and I really appreciate everyone that helped out there. That was great. And we decided on a fun little theme of like he wanted like we watched Castle in the Sky, familiar, and so he really liked how like the robots were like covered in earth and like had been like long shut down and kind of slowly reclaimed by the earth, and kind of pitched an idea of like this messy look, and that we can put like dirt effects on things and such like that and grass clumps, because it would facilitate him having something that he thinks like that would look cool but wasn't above his skill set. And so by like focusing that into like this style could be messy, and like his mistakes aren't going to show up. They're not going to, you know,
Discourage.
wasn't it leading him down to a path that would be like, hey, you got to have really crisp lines here or anything like that. So it helps facilitate more enjoyment because we set kind of the goals and boundaries and worked with like nice simple tech of being like dry brushing all the main colors, doing some washes, doing some small edge highlights, doing some OSL in like some, like simple sloppy fashion. And he gets a cool looking model without having to stress or go too far in any direction. So it's helping facilitate keeping him positively reinforced on it by getting a result that he's happy with.
That's pretty cool. That's something certainly with little kids is trying to hold their attention. Things I think.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's challenges, but I think we're all kind of a ADHD household, and when the family hyperfixates, we all get to sit down and paint and work on things together just fine. It's been pretty fun that way.
I really enjoy the fact that that's something that you've created specifically for him, though. Like I'm sure that is going to keep him motivated just by particular. Like you've put a lot of thought into it, and I think that's something that we've seen some of the post pictures that you've posted and some of the stuff he's painted. It looks really really good. So
Awesome, thank you. He'll love to hear that. I have one challenge that I'm dealing with right now with him in modeling and gaming is we've been playing games of War Machine at home, and he's won every game. And now he's trying to build this image in his mind that his dad has no game. And he's like starting to question why he's winning every game and like kicking my butt. And I'm just like, oh, buddy.
all right, gloves are coming off for this
I
one.
haven't. Yeah. I just gotta show him what like a sheerest assassination feels like.
Yeah.
But I've tried not to be cruel to him yet.
No. Well, he'll get it one day. No worries. his time will come.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool, though. I it's something that not a lot of people talk about. Um, for me, anyways, I find myself the older I get, that I gravitate towards people that have similar schedules. Like we were talking about this earlier as well. Um, sometimes this time at night for us can be a bit late for other people, but I know that I appreciate when other dads are on the same schedule as me, and it's like, okay, well, we can't do
Hmm.
it too early because the kids aren't in bed yet, and it's going to be too much aggro for me to jump out of the evening routine here. So it's I find myself gravitating towards people with similar time schedules as me. I oftentimes during the week I get my online game with a friend of mine, David. He also plays Chimera. And he's like, okay, well, Friday nights at 9 p.m. That's when I can play, and I'm like, perfect. That's when I can play too.
Hmm.
It's just nice to have people that have a similar expectations, for stuff like this. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, like it always seems to work out a little better. Like, life's life and we gotta balance so many things, and it's nice to be able to pull this off and still accommodate everything else in your life
Yep.
appropriately. And I think like our gaming group has kind of done a really good job of accommodating the dads in the group quite well. And like just we've always kind of worked around that, and like going to our friend Ryan or going to Ryan's place to play games always after his kids were in bed, and it was kind of set this like you know 7:30, 8 o'clock till midnight gaming session that like we could all get out and do. And it helped, keep all of us sane
Yeah.
through, you know, the last few years and everything else going on, right? Like there's something therapeutic about getting together with your friends and playing games and shooting the shit in between and talking about life and rolling some dice.
It's interesting to me because I think that that's one of the most common reasons. Just because, War Machine tends to be a male-dominated, um, game, um, and a lot of times the sort of the age group that people play in, tends to attract an older crowd for War Machine for whatever reason. And a lot of times when
Mm.
you see group members, when you see meta members sort of come and go through the hobby, I think that's a very common reason that people leave or don't play as often is because they either move into a new relationship or they have kids. And it makes it so that it's just really, really hard for them to interact with the hobby the same way that they were able to when single or when they didn't have kids or for whatever. Sometimes it's work and other things, but I think that it's super common that that is a reason people fall off the gaming bandwagon, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about very often in the social media circles and just gaming in general. And that's obviously something that's been very important, um, because it's been a challenge trying to keep my attention and keep my motivation to play when you go sometimes it's years when especially when your kids are really little, right? Where you just can't interact very much. Um, and it's something that people don't talk about very much. And I think that it's something that I've tried to incorporate in content that I um, sort of making space for that. We've had a couple of episodes in the past where we've talked to people specifically about being a war gamer and being a dad and incorporating that into their hobby time and just sort of forcing that trying to make all of those things work together as best that they can. So I appreciate that you have some perspective on that as well.
I think a big thing, especially when it comes with children, is like don't be afraid to show your kids what things you love because like setting up and painting and like I'll do it and it's not to like I'm not trying to like ignore my kids while I paint. And the amount of times I'll sit down to like paint something while my kids paint and I've got like 2 seconds of base coating done and that's all I achieved while I like overviewed my kids painting and helped them with what they're doing and stuff like that. But I always view it as like an investment because as they get more comfortable with it, you'll get more time to it as well too. And that's just kids growing up in general. And so like by doing that at a young age with them and like now the idea of like having like a Saturday paint couple hours and like hobby time, like we really enjoy our our little hobby time and like my daughter will join in paint and like we got a do you remember a game called Super Dungeon Explorer at all?
I've never played it before. I know what it is, but
I got a lot of Super Dungeon Explorer for my kids because we're getting into like the D&D age group and stuff like that too. And like we found that that game's been really fun and easy for them to play and pick up and be nerdy with us. And so my kids have been tasked with painting those models,
nice.
and um, my daughter will block out the colors she wants on a model and like paint them, and then she asks me to clean it up, and I'll go paint it to like however far I'd like to jump in there on it. But it's been a fun process of just like involving them and not stressing about it. Like nothing needs to be perfect, nothing needs to be anything other than like you're just spending time and like getting to play War Machine and with my son now is just super fun to like uh a that he's growing and playing and then like I'm finding like I like to just take like weird units and try different things because I'm playing my son.
Yeah.
I'm rolling dice, whatevs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see like how far it may go. And like we've had chats when like a tournament comes up and he's like, "Can I come and hang out?" And I'm like, you're like, that's going to be a bit too much for you right now. But like, there's going to be a day where like I gotta get him to like tag along for the day and he'll check everything out and probably ask everyone a million questions, but he'll be happy as pie to do it.
That's pretty cool. I've tried. My daughter's just 7.
Hmm.
She turned 7 in November, and the attention span is not super high. What I have been doing is he really likes because I can 3D print sort of articulated. It really likes axolotls, little underwater creatures, and so like I've printed a bunch of the here. I'll show you what I've got here. Printed these things.
You're talking to a fellow dad.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
daughter, yeah, axolotls. We have like way too many
yeah.
toys of them.
I've been printing these, a couple of different colors, couple of different sizes, and I've just thrown some spray paint on them, and she's been enjoying
Hmm.
painting these. So we've done that together a little bit. There's not a ton of detail on these, just sort of, making them different colors and stuff like that. So that is something that we've done a little bit. That's we might get maybe 15 minutes out of that on a Saturday afternoon, but at least it's something. um,
Yeah,
so
and it's all about like stretching the goalpost, right?
yep.
Like you 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 get what you can get out of it, and kind of go with the flow.
And it's just about like finding what is interesting to them and sort of tagging along with that. And for whatever reason, this particular
Hmm.
this particular thing is something that's interested her. Um, so sort of, I'm here to
They're one of the most adorable animals.
so we've been to Science World now 3 times, and they have an axolotl. And like Science World here in British Columbia, it's a kind of like a children's museum slash um, I guess children's museum is the best way to describe it. And it's, there's a ton of stuff in there for people that aren't local. It's a pretty cool place to go if you have kids. It's not so interesting for adults, but they've got so many different exhibits, and for her, it's like we have to see the axolotls because they have one axolotl in this tiny aquarium in the corner of this one part, and that's the only thing she wants to see when we go. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't get how they've like taken over like just children's minds and hearts. Like you talk to any kid this age in that age group and they know what an axolotl is and probably adore
I think it's a smile. They just have a natural smile on them.
it. Derpy things are awesome.
Cool. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation so far. I think that I will try and do this again in the future, despite my distraction with questions and stuff like that. But before I jump into the last question, I want to give you an opportunity to pimp your channel. So, what's the name and where can people find you on the internet?
Uh, right now, so the name is I go under Raise the Dead Studios, and right now I only have a Facebook page because I'm getting old and bad with social media, um, and I'm working on trying to create sculpting videos and content to share on like YouTube, and but right now it's trying to post little work in progress photos and such on like the War Machine community and try to stay War Machine focused there and just kind of hopefully create like some fun tutorials and hobby content that people can enjoy.
Well, let me know if there's anything that I can um, help uh, raise awareness for. You we have our local Discord as well for Vancouver. You're welcome to post
Hmm.
anything in there as well. We also have a painting thread in there. which I'm trying to encourage people to put stuff in because it's been kind of slow lately. But I haven't been the best about posting my stuff in there either, but I'm going to try and resurrect that as well. And then if I do end up printing some more terrain stuff, I will definitely send it your way. See if you guys can help us out with that.
Oh yeah, we'd have a riot working on that stuff.
Awesome. Before we jump off then, what is the most exciting thing about the year ahead?
I honestly, with what we're hoping to see out of like Adepticon coming up
Yeah.
and what they're going to preview, I'm so like Gravediggers look amazing. I think they like a with what they're doing with Mark IV and their army designs. When I initially saw it, and I'm like, oh, you're taking like seeing Chimera is like Legion and Convergence kind of mushed together, like Apple Pen style, and seeing like Gravediggers come out and what we're seeing there, and like I think they're starting to really get into their stride of the character that was very inspiring about War Machine. Because War Machine armies were very different than other armies I saw in other games. Like you look at the Troll Bloods, you look at Circle, like in no other game was I able to play an army of werewolves. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so seeing like, the Whispers of Old Umbry coming out is super exciting. I really can't wait to see what they do with those models. And of course, the rumors of a Chimera Gargantuan, I want to see so bad, so bad. I'd do terrible favors to those people at SFG to get my hands on one of those, or at least see its concept art.
Yeah, we've seen a silhouette for it, I think. And astute people will note that there was some rules that got leaked accidentally a while ago, but we have not seen the model yet. So I'm
Yeah,
also waiting
the
for the Dust Colossal as well, because we have not seen any concept art for that either.
there was a little clip released of art for it, but it was like a snapshot of its fist.
Yes, yeah.
And like, I go back and I look at like the Helios and like the Ret Colossals and just like such a cool model. I'm really excited for the Dusk one. I think uh they have a really unique look about them, and if they can make that Colossal look good, I'd be so pumped for that. Really everything they're putting out these days all looks amazing. I just want to know if I can cut it up and put some fins on it.
I am excited to see what you end up doing with that.
Well, I have a dead wyvern in my cabinet of one that I was a little too aggressive with what I tried to chop up and change on it. That I'd like to do a video one day of resurrecting that wyvern and bringing it back to life.
Awesome. Well, if people end up listening to this, they can keep it locked on your channel, and I'm sure we'll see lots of cool stuff come out from that. So
Awesome.
great.
Thanks for tonight. This was a blast.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I definitely see more from each other, I think, and I'll catch you around.
Awesome, dude.
Cool, man.
Talk to you later.
Great. Have an awesome night.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.